We have Nia Watenza on our podcast with the next best thing. Nia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you. I have a lot to learn actually on this podcast, ma'am, because you have been rather modest. So Nia and I were introduced through a mutual friend. And when my friends knew that I wanted to start this podcast, she's like, "Oh, I've got a friend you can talk to. She does voiceover work." And then Nia's like, I do some voiceover work, ma'am. You don't do that. You are a voiceover artiste. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm starting to learn to claim that.
You learn. The receipts are abundant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's funny because when you first start, I don't know if you've ever felt like this. When you first start with something, you're just doing it because you like it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I've done a couple cool things. And then it's just kind of fleeting. Like I did the cool thing and the cool thing happened. And then you're on to the next thing. And then one day you look up at your resume and it's like, I've done some things. I'm in this space. So I'm feeling that now. Thank you so much. But it's been a journey. So now I'm starting to embrace the fact that, I have arrived.
Like very much. I mean, the fact that your voice can do all of these things and sound so different from, one project to another. It's art. It really is art.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's interesting you say that because I never recognized this as a talent. Like I come from a family of artists. My grandmother paints. I don't think you can see her. I've got her painting on the wall. I think you can see it. My grandmother paints. My brothers are rappers, and they do visual art. My niece does. She sings. She's in musical theater. So you know how you think of art, and there's very specific lanes that you think of art in. Mm-hmm. I just never thought about the lane of just using your voice, and I can't sing. So I think that's another thing. It's like never really thought about my voice as an instrument. And I'm learning to act, but acting was never my thing either. So it is an art, and I'm excited because I've always felt like I was a creative, but I just didn't know how to execute it. So I'm thrilled to be able to find a lane where I can really find a way to, showcase my creativity in my own unique way.
Yeah, and it seems like you were great at math as well, which they don't like associate artists with being good at math. Yes. Because you got your degree in allied medicine.
Yeah. So my background is this is an interesting journey. So I actually have a clinical background. I went to school. I originally was going to school for physical therapy and started off in the athletic training program at Ohio State, have a bachelor's in athletic training. And the goal was to get a master's in physical therapy. And I realized midway through somewhere, I don't really like working with patients. I don't like pain. I don't like blood. I don't like guts. I don't like seeing people in emergent situations and I have to do something about it. And so, kind of typical story. I think a lot of us end up thrust into these spaces where you don't know what you want to do at 18. So you kind of do the thing that's practical. Right. And then you realize maybe midway through, halfway, whatever way through, I don't like this, but I just finished. I just, I kind of went through with it and now I have the piece of paper. So I spent 15 years of my career professionally in the healthcare space because I started there in the sciences. And so it's been kind of the starting point of my journey that took me to a lot of different places that I didn't want to be because I didn't want to be there in the first place.
I was about to say, did you not want to be there from the beginning? Was it all like, I don't really like this, but I'm just, it's something to do. I'm making money. I'm moving up.
Yeah. One of the things I think for anyone who makes a career transition or big changes in life, I think sometimes you have to get to that point where you look back and you realize a part of the problem is me. There's something about me that has continuously been on this journey, and I won't say in the wrong direction, but not in the direction that I want to redirect to now. And one thing I recognize about myself is that I like getting the job done. I'm one of those people that you give me something, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done so well. Nobody's going to do it better than me. I will outperform you. And I realize now my Achilles heel in life has been that I will attack a task and do it so well that I don't even realize I didn't like it. And so, that's much of my career that happened that way.
That really resonates because the pain or I don't know if pain is the right word, but kind of like a discontent becomes like part of the process. So when it comes, it's like, well, that's how it's supposed to feel, right? Like,
right. Exactly. And I do think we are in a bit of a masochistic society where people do make you feel as though you're supposed to grind hard, work hard. Everything's supposed to feel hard. So, this whole concept of doing things because you enjoy it, it's something that we're told to do. But is it really reinforced? Is it something that along our journey that we're really, really digging into? I think now it is. But, for those of us who've been in the game for a long time, it's really been about the hustle and the grind.
Yeah.
And I can do that well. So, and I've been applauded and awarded for it. So it's something that I had to realize at a certain point that I wanted a departure from, because just because I could do things didn't mean that it was the right thing for me to do. And I'm one of those people, I believe I can do anything. It's just a matter of now figuring out, like, what do I want to do? So that's been the journey.
I remember when I worked in Philly, when I was reporting in Philly, I interviewed a woman who was like leading the Mural Arts program. And so Philly has so many beautiful murals. It's like, it's a thing there. Right. And she is a grown woman. And I can't remember what the story was about, if a new mural was going to be commissioned or whatever she got through. But I remember during the interview, I don't want to say how old I think she is, but she's grown, right? She's grown. She clapped and jumped up and down while she was talking about this project.
Wow.
And I distinctly remember after the interview talking to my photographer and said, is that how we're supposed to feel about work? You know what I mean? Like, I really was just like, because I kept on asking friends, like, how do you feel about work? How do you feel about work? How do you feel about work? Because I did not know how I was supposed to feel, how work was supposed to make me feel. And I was just like, I mean, now I know, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, right.
Right.
But it was just like, she literally, and I distinctly, I will never forget. I was like, she's talking about work though. Yeah. Like, you could like the thing in theory, but she was like, yeah, and then I have to do this and I have to do that. And it was like a lot of work she had to do for it. But she was joyful from such a like just authentic place on the inside. And it wasn't her first mural.
Yeah.
It may have been her 100th, honestly. Like, she started the program, she founded it. And so she had been doing it for years and years, yet she still had this childlike joy talking about it. And I was like, who does this? I thought she was weird.
These weird artists.
Yeah, these weird artists. Like, is it that serious?
Yeah.
Like, but it was like, oh, I'm in awe of that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you in terms of being in awe in it. And I think you get to a point where you realize it's possible, and then it puts you in pursuit of it. I had a similar experience where in one of my former roles, I had a colleague share with me that she had very few interests outside of the work that we were doing, that it was just what she woke up to do. She ate, breathed, slept this type of work. Her family, her friends, all, like, everything was centered around this job. And I remember not thinking, at this point, I was kind of at my wit's end and not thinking like, oh, this is lame. I remember thinking, wow, how incredible, because I hate this, like, how incredible that you actually get to wake up and get the paycheck from the thing that you really enjoy. And it shows, you show up and here it was, not to say that it didn't show in my work. I had to show it in a way that was so much more painful to produce it because I didn't have that love.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand what you're saying, that there's times in your life where you look at that and think, these people are delusional. And then I think that that's kind of the shining moment when you realize, like, I need to chase that because having that desire match the output is just something that's magical and beautiful that a lot of people don't ever get a chance to experience because it's not something that's really, again, reinforced in what we should be doing.
Right. So let's go back and talk about what were you doing before? What did your job entail?
Yeah. So my career path has somewhat varied, but it's somewhat linear. So after I got my degree in sports medicine, I thought, well, here I got this degree and I'm not working with patients. So I ended up parlaying that into medical device sales. So I worked in the sales space for 8 years and, great building foundation for me in terms of like teaching me how to go out there, be resilient, push myself in front of folks, sell whatever I have, and, not be offended if I get, 10 no's today. But and I really I like the support side of it. I realize I'm one of those people that I really do like to find a solution for people. But the majority of my job was knocking on 10 doors, and I might get one yes out of those 10 people I spoke to, and getting a bunch of no's, being treated like just the person who's coming in to give lunch. And so there was a point in time where I realized, even though I was really successful and I liked that part of it, I wanted to do something where I can kind of be a part of the decision-making and the thought process and all of this. So after leaving my sales career, I ended up going into marketing, and decided, it kind of makes sense again to continue down this medical journey, because this is where my resume says I am a best fit. So I ended up in medical marketing. I worked in different areas in healthcare, but, in on the business side. So in biopharmaceuticals, in my medical devices, ended my career in a space called digital therapeutics, where we were kind of merging the world between treatments and technology. So using like app therapy to treat patients for mental health and things of that nature. So my day-to-day kind of looked like what I'd say maybe a lot of marketers looks like. I did a lot of like product launches and strategy work. So, just everything from how are we going to take, this plan of this product that we're trying to get FDA approved, and go all the way from the who is this for, the demographics, and all the way from the big picture strategy stuff, all the way down to the tactical, patient videos and things like that to educate patients. So, but it was, a lot of the behind the scenes, marketing tasks. In pharmaceutical or in the healthcare space, one of the things that was always a bit challenging to me was all of the red tape. Because, as you watch pharmaceutical commercials and they have to tell you about every person that died who took this drug, there's just so many things regulatory wise that you have to do, or that are in place to make sure that you're communicating your messaging correctly. But it also creates a ton of creative limitations. And so even though in going into marketing, I always thought, oh, this is going to be so creative and cool, and we can do all these things, but you're kind of handcuffed by a lot of the red tape. So that was pretty challenging to me. And it's just it's grueling. It's demanding, grueling work. I had wonderful bosses, wonderful mentors, great people around me. But, a lot of the process behind the work that I was doing and the amount of work that I was doing, especially in the end, as I moved up the ladder and became a director, it was just a lot of, a lot of time spent doing things that weren't as creative or didn't make me feel as connected to how you, treat a patient and how you can, save a person. It made me just feel like there was a lot of minutia, if you will. Yeah. So, I think a lot of people get into roles where there's a conflict between what you think the job looks like and what the actual day-to-day is. Right. And that was certainly my challenge. The departure between, the end product, the end result, and how cool this shiny, toolkit or whatever it is that you develop is, and what you're actually doing to create it, was just something that I found to be not quite my cup of tea and not quite something that I enjoyed.
So why don't you just go get another marketing job in an area that's creative, the arts or fashion or beauty or,
Excellent question. So that was actually my process. And I tried that so many times. I think that one of the challenges that I came, up against was, you get to a point where you've been doing this thing for so long that the market tells you that this is the thing that you do. And this is what we're going to hire you for again and again and again. And it's so easy to get caught in that trap. And really challenging to be able to, depart into different spaces. And not to say impossible, but it can be challenging. And I think I exhausted every aspect of every type of role that I could get in the healthcare space, and even started to look external at other spaces. And then after a while, just started to realize, I don't even know if marketing is it anymore. I think I want a complete change from all of this. The challenging thing was, I didn't know what I wanted to do next.
Talk about the discontent, though. How did that show up for you?
Yeah. Oh, boy. You know what? The interesting thing is, I think because, as I mentioned before, because I'm one of those people that, as long as I am performing and I'm doing a great job, I was able to find a sense of satisfaction in that. However, there are these tipping points, because there's a balance that I needed in my life where, as long as I was doing a great job, even though if the work was hard or maybe something that I wasn't so excited about, if I had free time after work to be able to travel or to do whatever else that, fulfilled my personal life, I was happy. And there was a certain point at which the balance tipped. And I think that was in my last role where I became a director. I was leading a major project. There was a lot of pressure on me to make lots of things happen. And I just no longer had the time to fulfill what I wanted to do. I was finally at a point where I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. I have the title, I have, the status, I have all these things. I don't have time for me. I don't have time to plan a trip for friends. I don't have time to do all the things that I actually am showing up for in this job for. So I think a big part also of, why I wanted a departure from the life that I had been living was just because I wanted a different type of life.
Altogether.
Yeah. Part of it was understanding that, you may not really like this as much as you think you do. And the higher you get and the more responsibility you have, then that becomes harder to fake it. It becomes harder to put in the hours and the time, the more hours and time that are involved. But another part of it is, how do you want to live your life? Is this what you want to do? Because you're not going to go anywhere but up from here. It's not going to get anything but busier from here. Sure, you could even make more money from here, but you're going to be spending less time doing the things that you enjoy personally. So I realized also the discontent was in the things that had been taken away from me. The more that I started to pursue, how do I climb this ladder in this space, and how I really wanted to know, how could I get a little bit more balance back?
Yeah. I mean, I remember doing that in different ways. One, in really outlining what is it that you actually value. Like, I'm getting awards, I'm more visible, because that was in my space, visibility is currency. And I was the most visible I had ever been in the number one market in the country. And I was just like, when I wrote down a list of what I value, it's my family, it's my friends, it's traveling, how I want to have my own family someday, and will this position or the future positions that they, were offering me, will it allow me to invest in any of these top things? And the answer was no. And so it was just like, it in no ways. And I was like, there is this is so imbalanced.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then I remembering, like, thinking it became like really bad, where I thought, like, every time Monday would come, I'd be like, I can't wait for Friday. I can't wait for Friday. I just can't wait and I was literally living for Fridays.
Absolutely. And there's the power in the wisdom of memes, right?
Prophecies
and memes. I remember years ago, and I can't quote this verbatim, but there was a meme that said something like, if you're living for the weekend, you're skipping out on 5/7 of your life. And I'm like,
yes,
holy crap, that's absolutely true. This is exactly what I'm doing, is I am investing all the time and energy, the majority of my time and energy, into a space and time that I don't really want to do these things. And then I'm just living for this little bit of time that I'm trying to get as much gratification as possible, because my life it's really not balanced truly. So yeah, the value seeing is really important.
Or it's for me, it was sometimes recovery from the labor, because it took so much extra work to show up in this way to pretend like everything was cool, right? So it's recovery from the extra labor to not be a sourpuss, every day. And that's how I would, sometimes spend weekends, and just to recharge. So then I can, all right, go back into this space yet again. So talk about the pandemic, because I know that was a big deal for you. How did looking back, although we're still kind of in it, I guess. I don't know what the definitions are right now. Are we still in it or not?
According to the streets, we're not.
According
to the way the streets are flowing, I don't know.
And according to some streets, depending on where you live, we never had it to begin with.
You're so right about that.
When you're looking back, how would you define that time? How would you characterize that time for you?
It was monumental for me. And I say that recognizing that for a lot of people, the pandemic was very, very tough, and that, there was a lot of tragedy, a lot of loss. And that is not lost on me. But I'll say from my experience, I could not have imagined my life being on the trajectory that it's on now without that time. So just to kind of highlight my departure, and how I left marketing. So I got to a point where, as I described earlier, I just had exhausted everything. What else can I do with these degrees that I have? What else can I do with this experience that I have? I'm in the best possible position that I could have, and I'm not fulfilled. And I recognized, and follow me with timelines. In November of 2019, I recognized this is not happening. I'm not a multitasker. I'm not one who can be in a role, the type of job that was as busy as the role that I was in, and then also try to identify what's next and do soul searching. I just couldn't do it.
It's so I thought, like, didn't have the capacity.
I just don't have the capacity. I put so much into whatever I do. I'm not someone who can quiet quit. I can't, that's just not something that's in me. It's either I'm doing it at 100 or I'm not doing it at all. And I recognize that about myself. And I realized it was just really time to jump off the ladder. I just had been there too long trying to patch and work and make things happen. And it was just time to stop. And so I just decided I'm just quitting. I gave, 2 weeks notice, if that. And it was one of those things where I kind of needed to scorch the earth behind me. Like, I need to be done with this industry. I need to be done with all of this. I need to not be tempted to come back into it. And again, November 2019, we're all going to 2020. It's going to be our year.
It's our year, girl. We had plans.
We had plans. We had plans. And the thing is, too, I had plans to leave the industry for some time. But again, because I didn't know what I was trying to walk into, I kind of was creating this a little bit of a like a slow safety net. I was maxing out my 401k. I was saving money. I was doing all these things so that, I was investing. I had investment properties. I was doing things so that when I left, I would leave with comfort and safety.
Yes, because you're grown, right?
Because we're grown, we got bills. I can't just be out here poor and returning to my parents' home. Can't do this.
Right.
Grown people can't do this. So that was always a plan. But when I left, I hadn't really quite gotten to the place that I needed from a safety nest and a nest egg perspective. I just left at a time where it was just like, I can't take this anymore. I'm having panic attacks. I am like, my body is reacting to the fact that I am not doing the things that I need to do. So when I left in 2000, at the end of 2019, my goal was to take a couple months before I got back into the actual job search and first establish a creative outlet for myself. And what I thought I wanted to do professionally was I've always wanted to dabble in the nonprofit space. And so I thought, I'm going to just kind of transition into this nonprofit space. I think, I really want to do like partnerships or something. I just had all these different ideas of what the full-time job would be. But I thought, I've never given myself a creative outlet. People have been telling me for years, I have a great voice. Let me try voiceover out. So I made that my number one priority. My first step was to give myself space and a couple months just to get this voiceover thing going. I, again, heard about it for years. In marketing, we always hired voiceover artists. So I understood like that part of the entire project was the end where someone reads the script that we've created that's come out of this big strategy. But I didn't know how to be that person. So I took a couple months and started training with the studio, learned the technique, learned kind of the ins and outs of it, learned how to set up a home studio, because a lot of the work that we're doing is inside of a closet that you can just set up studio, and it's, really pretty easy to do at home. And then March rolls around and we all know what happens then.
But wait a minute. So while you're taking these classes, are you thinking that this is going to be a nice thing to do on the side? And then so this is, you weren't saying, all right, this is going to be my new noble career.
No.
Not
at all. Not in any world did I imagine that this was even a career. I thought that this was something fun that you do when you're playing around and you've got some free time away from your full-time job where you're salaried. and you're working 40, 50 hours a week. I never thought that this would be a career. I just thought it would be something fun for me to play around with that I can build up. That's
before we move on to talk more about that, I do want to go back to you quitting, because when you're like, for me, being so ambitious, like the idea of quitting something, like I quit. I was just raised where you don't quit. Like you don't quit anything, even when it's suck it up. It's work. Work is not supposed to be fun. Work is not supposed to be joyful. You get your values someplace else, and that's not supposed to be like a reflection of any of that. So you got a good job, you got benefits, people are cheering for you. Yeah. So how did you deal with the concept of I quit? Was there a moment that happened?
Oh yeah, it was. And it really was when I had a full-on panic attack, and I hadn't had a panic attack in a long time. I have a lot of challenges with anxiety, and that was another thing I realized, that I had not really dealt with them the way that I should have, but also that this situation was weighing on me to the point where it was bringing up anxiety in a way that I hadn't experienced in years. Mm-hmm. And it really was one of those moments that was so jarring that it made me stop in my tracks and say, wait a second, your body is trying to tell you that you need to get a grip and that there needs to be something different. And I just, it was the effect that it started to take on my mental health that I realized it was not worth it anymore. Mm-hmm. It just was not worth it. You get to a certain point in life where, I'm sure you can relate to this, earlier in career, the only thing that's important is being successful. The only thing that matters.
Only thing.
That's the only thing that matters is getting the job done, proving to other people, proving to yourself that you can do it. And I think I had gotten to the point where I proven to myself so many times that I can do this, that I was finally able to give myself the grace to say, Nia, yes, for 20 years, you've been proving to yourself that you can do things. Stop and take care of your body. You get one life, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And, after seeing with one of the companies that I was working with, started off Baxter Healthcare, we went through, a split, a merger, another acquisition, all these different transitions. And in the time, I'm working, trying to hold things together as you're watching people come and go, leadership's changing, bosses are lost, all these things that are happening where projects are getting pulled. And then you start to see that you could put all your heart and soul into something, into a project, into something that you're working on. And 2 seconds later, somebody new can come in and say, I don't really think that's a priority. We're going to can it. And it's like, but I missed weddings for this. I missed all these life events to pour into this thing that you just in a split second have taken from you. And I think some of those experiences along the way really showed me that this stuff is not worth it. It really isn't. Granted, the paycheck is nice, but in terms of pouring your life into something that is actually now starting to take away from you, that was the moment that I was able to really give myself permission to say, it's time to go. And it's time to prioritize self, whatever that looks like, because I had never done it before.
Yeah, no, that's so, I feel the same way. It was in my body too, where I was afraid to trust myself anymore, where I was feeling like out of body. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It makes so much sense.
Where I was just like, I know what my normal is, but now I can't trust that I can show up in this way consistent. Like I can't wear all the masks at the same time.
Right.
And I'm just like, I've been triggered so much that I was so afraid that one day it was going to be the wrong
day.
It's going to be the wrong day. And all these years of being a good employee, because you're not going to get grace being a Black woman in the space, right? Mm-mm. That one day could just erase all of my accolades, all of my hard work, all of the goodwill, because I really just had a bad day. Mm-hmm. But because it's not being recognized of what has been building because of like the ecosystem, Absolutely. So I couldn't trust. I was really like scared for myself, where I couldn't trust myself.
Well, I'm so glad you got out of there before, before they couldn't trust you either to control yourself. Right, because I understand sometimes that volcano, gets to brewing, and nobody wants to see that eruption because it's so much that's been pushed down for so many years.
Right.
And we owe it to ourselves when we feel that way to create a space for ourselves where we're okay, because nobody else is created for us.
Right. That's the whole point of this too, was that, and I wrote this down in a journal years and years and years and years ago, not a podcast, but just, I want to create a space, especially for Black women, because it's not naturally created for us to be free.
Yeah.
And to be seen and to live with dimension, right? Where it won't be judged so harshly, and the impact won't be so devastating in a lot of different ways, emotionally, financially, like all the ways. So yeah, that's all just so real.
It's so real. And there's
so real.
So many things that we deal with that people deal with a lot. We are not allowed to express anything that is outside of compassion and love and, just being there and supporting everyone else as we're dealing with our stuff. Right. And I think that's what's so unfair. I mean, I would consider myself somewhat neurodivergent. Like I have ADD, I have anxiety issues, and I also have narcolepsy. So I would show up to work every day, tired, with brain fog, and not able to focus. And, oftentimes I think the way that I would wear the mask, as you said, and overcompensate by being the very nice, friendly person, and smiling and trying to laugh at everyone. But really all I wanted was for everyone to give me a beat, because I need to try to figure out how I can get my brain to wake up, focus, so I can tackle this spreadsheet that I need to, as you guys are all talking around me, and my body does not function in this. But if I tell you that as a Black woman, I'm told just to get it together. I'm not allowed to really have all of these things that are going on that I have to work through. I'm just supposed to show up and make you feel comfortable. And so I think that's another big thing that, I talked to a friend of mine one day who's also had like some healthcare challenges that did not allow her to show up at work in a way that other people did. And it's, I think that's also something that people don't really focus on enough, is that we're not always only dealing with the aspect of being a Black woman. Sometimes we're dealing with so many other things that other people deal with that they get a little bit of a pass for that we don't.
Yeah.
And so, that was another big thing, is that I just never felt like my body was designed to work in these spaces where you're expected to rise early and work long hours. And, like you said, try to figure out how on the weekends, do I play or do I just rest? Because I'm exhausted. How do I put on a smile while I'm trying to focus on these things? I mean, there's just so many different elements. And I'm sure most people who I've worked with never knew I was struggling with any of these things.
Right.
Because I masked it so well and I overcompensated in so many ways.
Right.
And so there's just so many elements that we don't get a pass for, that we really struggle and suffer in silence. And sometimes we're just forced to find a way that we can just work things out the way that work best for us.
Do you think your work ethic and just going hard was like a trauma response or like a way to overcompensate?
It's interesting because it's hard to say what is truly inside of you. And I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, but what is truly you? What was little Nia all along without all of these other things? Or what is the trauma response? Because I honestly think a lot of it was just always me. I've always had higher aspirations for myself than, even from the time of being a small child, even than my parents. And my parents pushed us hard, but it was like, that's nice, but I'm going to do this. It's just, there was always something inside of me that always wanted to win in anything I did. Always felt like I could be the best in anything that I did. And I think really what happened was, it wasn't until I hit the workforce, and not even really until I hit corporate America, because in sales, you can kind of have all these things and you're working independently. And I think a lot of people with all the things I just described work in sales, because you're able to have the freedom and the flexibility to kind of do what you need to do. It kind of works for you to be all over the place and scattered.
Right.
It wasn't until I got into marketing that I really realized how hard it was to be in this corporate environment where you're expected to sit in a seat and show up and look away, and where everyone's looking at you, that I felt like, wow, this is really not good for my body, like it just, so actually, I guess looking back on the question, I think a part of me has always just innately been an overachiever. It wasn't until I started to really put myself in different environments that I had to really feel out for myself what is good for me and what is not. And where do I fit, and where is it that my body is rejecting this?
That's so November 2019, you quit, and then you start these classes for voiceover work that you thought was a hobby, a nice thing to kind of do for fun on the side because you were returning back to your fun space. At what point, well, first of all, what was that like going to the classes and like giving yourself that breathing room? And then like doing it when you're practicing, when you're learning about it, what was that like?
It was exciting. It was so fun. And I think especially in that stage, because there was no pressure. I did not think about at that time, how am I going to monetize this? And how am I going to do this? And I was just having fun. And there's something to be said, I think, about being able to give yourself space. And it is a privilege to be able to give yourself space to just do something for fun. And just because you purely enjoy it. So at that time, that's what it was. It was this thing that I could pull together, that I can build, but it doesn't have to be anything, but it can be something. It's so cool to see the things that my voice can do, to be on the other side of this thing. Because again, as a marketer, I start with the full package of whatever it is that I want someone to voice. And so now I'm at the tail end of it, where all I'm doing is taking a script, and I can look at the script and say, oh, okay, now I can kind of understand the strategy of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve, and what words they want stressed. I understand that from my marketing brain, but I can deliver it in a way that I can humanize it. And it's so, it was just really cool. It was just really cool to, for the first time, be doing something and learning something new just because I wanted to, not because I felt like it had to apply to some new skill that I needed to put on my resume or something that I needed to prepare for the next role. It just was because I decided to do it. So it was just an exhilarating feeling. And it just, I was just so excited to do it and just to have the opportunity to be in the space.
How did it go from a hobby to being your gig? This is what you do.
Yeah, so that's the 2020 story, everybody. Again, I know this is, at this point, it's cliche, but it is wisdom. You make a plan and you watch God laugh. Because my thing was in 2020, I was just going to do that part and then quickly shift gears and then start looking for a job because I hadn't saved enough at this point to sustain me long term. And so things just started to fall apart in all the best ways. This investment property I was telling you about was an Airbnb. So you can imagine what happened to that. Now I have a mortgage to pay and I don't have, you couldn't Airbnb at that time. And so that fell apart. Of course, the job search fell apart because here I am, a corporate girl trying to get into the nonprofit space. Who's hiring? Nonprofits not hiring. They're not hiring, period, because they're not getting donations because no one has money. Everything that I had planned to do, the door shut in my face. And I was left sitting there. And I'm not going to pretend that I went through this phase where it was just like, oh, this is okay. No, I sat in the bed for 2 weeks and did not move and just thought, why me, God? Why is this happening? But then, things started to magically come together in a way that I hadn't anticipated. So I was able to sell my house. Magical seller's market opened up. I was able to sell the house and get a lump of cash that gave me time. I was able to realize that I'm not getting a job, period. This is not going to happen. No one's hiring. So I need to just do the things that I can do. So I started to just play. I started to continue playing with voiceover because that was the one thing I could do. I started to play with, just doing consulting projects for free for people. I started playing with a lot of different things. But being locked down and shut out of everything else I wanted to do was the biggest blessing because I would not have decided to pour so much in this had this not been the only tool that was left for me during this time.
Wow.
So, right? What a blessing. Looking back at it now, I can speak about this in such a positive way. It was scary for a long time. But it was just one of those things of learning to listen to, all the signs, all the things that were, and just letting go. I did not want to sell my property. I did not want to give up on some of the other things that I was looking at, but I had to let go because there wasn't any other option.
Right.
And so, so it wasn't until I let go and I just decided that, hey, let me play around. I ended up finding a friend, shout out to Dion Lack, a friend of mine on Facebook who self-published a book and wanted to turn it into an audio book. And so, you know, he's on Facebook and he's like, hey, does anybody want to, do I know any voiceover artists who can voice this over? And I'm like, me. He's like, you have experience with audiobook. I'm like, yeah, sure I do. No idea.
I could do it.
No idea. No idea. So he quickly learned I didn't know what I was doing, but he was so nice as to like help me out. And because I learned from the studio, like, you know, all the foundations of what to do for voiceover, but it's different when you actually start getting in motion.
Right.
So my first project was doing an audiobook that we self-published together. I learned how to do all the editing. I learned how to do all the voices on the spot. I learned how to do everything. And it was just like, wow, this is so cool. Such a big feeling of accomplishment. And it was self-published. So this is not anything that was bringing in major money. But again, I was given the flexibility in 2020 by being shut down and by being gifted this nice little gift that I wasn't anticipated of, you know, a little bit more financial security to be able to just play.
Yeah.
And so it was the biggest blessing for me.
That's so cool. I mean, because I really do feel like even, you know, life is going to have hardships, right? But I also think that those hardships are necessary to create the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to have the hardship to create the opportunity because you get real resourceful. You start thinking through everything. And I feel like your brain, like just because it's a survival, you know, you're in survival mode, honestly. And that's
true.
where like some of the best ideas, some of the greatest companies were created out of hardship and being in survival mode. So I think that's so cool. And it allowed you call it play, but you were really developing a portfolio.
Yeah. So true. So true.
You know,
I
was to say, so when things opened up, you could say, no, I've done an audiobook before.
Yeah.
You know, and I've done all these other things before, and you might not have gotten paid for all of them or whatever, but still you did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I call it play because I was just enjoying myself. And so there was not too much pressure on it. I was able to, you know, kind of take my time with figuring out how to do certain things. And also kind of aside from the play thing, but one thing that was great for me about the pandemic is that I could not acknowledge anyone else's expectation of what I was doing. Because we were shut down, you know, like it wasn't like I could go outside and I'm hanging out with friends and we're all sitting around talking about the things that we're doing and they're going on and excelling in these cool corporate careers or whatever. And here I am over here trying to figure out what I'm doing next. You know, I had the freedom during that time to also not feel peer pressured, which for me was big. At the time, I needed that. Now, I don't know that I need that so much, but at the time I really needed to not have the pressure of looking around to see what other people are doing right now, or am I really just wasting my time because I'm sitting over here dibbling and dabbling in things and not even taking it seriously. So the ability to have the whole world shut down and to be isolated within myself and just connect to the things that I really wanted to do just because I wanted to do them was what really kind of took things to the next level. So to your point, it also doubled as experience because I got the portfolio. I also learned how to edit and I learned how to master certain skills, but just purely by doing the thing that I was really excited about.
That is so cool. How would you kind of describe how you feel today in comparison to how you felt in November of 2019?
Oh, wow. Oh my God. What a question. Wow. That is a really good question. And I'm grateful for that question because even though I sit and reflect a lot, you know, I have to thank her. I had to thank the version of her who was really willing to give up all sense of security to be this person, really willing to walk away from everything that I knew to be normal, to be stable, to be what everyone tells you. I mean, of course, I've had people in November 2019 pulling me aside saying, what are you doing? You don't have a next step. Like, girl, what are you doing out here? You got to just go out and just figure it out, huh? Okay, just figure it out. And this is even before the pandemic. But there was just that lack of stability, but the ability to take a risk on myself. was so scary. It was exciting because I knew that there was something big that was waiting for me, but it was so scary. But now to see all the ups and downs that I went through since then and how everything has worked out in my favor, and even to be able to look back and say, since I was young in my career, all those things that I experienced actually have still been working to this moment, right? Like we sometimes, I don't know about you, but I tend to beat myself up and say, why didn't I just do this, or do something different at this juncture? Or why didn't I change my major? Why didn't I do something different in my first role? If I knew how to do it, I would have done it then. If it were time for me to do it, I would have done it then. And all the things that I had to do, all the things I experienced, all the people I met along the way, all were getting me prepared for the moment that I am in now. So I am very, very grateful. And I'm not going to pretend that even after you make a departure from your old life and start doing something different, everything's magical. There's still moments that I doubt or that I wonder, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Or how am I growing this thing? Am I moving in the right direction? But having gone through that experience where you take such a big risk and you see the reward, but you also are able to interpret that sometimes not only the peaks are good for you, but the valleys are too.
Yes.
It really helps to lessen the blows as you go, as you move forward in anything you do.
That's why I call this the next best thing.
Yeah.
Not pivot and not plan B, because I don't feel like I'm doing any of that. I feel like this was my destiny when I started.
Yeah.
And as you said, I did what I knew to do at the time. And when I got new information, I made different decisions.
Absolutely.
So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
This is the part now where the ACT UP segment. So those are my initials, ACT. And for somebody who's feeling the whispers, as both of us have indicated, the whispers start yelling.
Yeah.
Right. And so somebody's feeling that this is not going to be it. What I thought this was going to be, how I thought I could move in this, is not it. What advice do you give them that they can take today to kind of get to their next best thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first step for somebody who's in that space is this: sit with it. And I say that because of the now that we're in. I feel like every day I'm coming across an article, and maybe it's just because the algorithm knows I'm a risk taker, but every day I'm coming across an article that says, like, live your best life. This is how such and such quit their job and is now doing this or that. I mean, there's a ton of voiceover articles like that. Live your best voiceover life. And there's just so much draw, I think, right now to call people into making these big moves that a lot of people started to make in and since the pandemic. And it's not always that. Not every call to make that big move is your call. I think we all need to just take a moment to sit with it, to figure out what it is that I'm actually like, what am I feeling? Because I think, as we both articulated earlier, sometimes it is, I need a total change. Sometimes it's not that big. Sometimes it's like, I just don't like the way this role is. I'm not growing in this role. Maybe there's another role within my company. I don't like this company. Maybe there's another company. It doesn't always mean just make this big, abrupt move to just blow up your life and just.
Right.
It's not always that easy. And I think that one thing I would say, I hope I didn't make my story sound like it was so easy and seamless, because I think that I left out a lot of stuff that was probably, really, really tough. But the thing that I recognize about my journey, it was timing, divine timing, that got me to a place where I needed to be. But also it was the right thing for me. So, and as we both talked about, it was about not only just voiceover. It wasn't just about doing that thing. It was about trying to figure out the type of life that I wanted to live. And I realized that's really what I was craving. So, all that to say, I think it's important for people just to sit with that feeling. If you're feeling like you want to change, try to figure out what exactly do you want to change? Is it you need a little bit more balance? Is it you need like a slightly new challenge? Is it you need a new position, new leadership? Or do you really want to blow up your life? But I think it's important to just kind of sit with that. So I think that's the first thing. I think another thing is, when you start to feel those whispers, I found it's so important to surround yourself with folks who are also feeling the whispers or on that wavelength. I know you and I were introduced by Joy Branch, who is one of my dear friends, one of your dear friends for longer.
Right.
Joy and I both left our former jobs around the same time. And so we became accountability partners and really helping each other to like push our way through this space of uncertainty, because there is no blueprint for following your own path.
No, because it's only yours. It's your only
path.
your path. You can listen even to this and say, you can take nuggets from it, but you're going to live your own life.
Absolutely.
This is going to look, you could do the same things, but it will look different in your life, you know?
Yeah. And you can read all the self-help books and all these things. Yeah. But if you're going to the same people that you've been talking to who are doing the life that you used to do, living that life, they're not really going to be able to help you no matter how much they can. And they actually may hurt you. They may, inadvertently, kind of, girl, go and get a job. They may not really understand that there are little struggles along the way that you're going to go through. And sometimes you really just need to be with people that are aligned to that journey that can help you through those small barriers. And I say small, they feel huge when you're there in them, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced lots of those, where it's just like, it's a mental hurdle where, it's something very, looking back, it could be really small, but in that moment, it could seem like it's everything. So to be around folks that are on that same wavelength, and it doesn't mean to say that you have to get rid of all your old friends, but you have to kind of find folks that are in it too. And I have felt like that has been a huge part of my journey, is just having those people that can help me navigate. And I think another thing too is going back to this blueprint thing, the fact that there is not one. I think it's important to really get to know yourself and your process during this time of transition. And that's any transition. And that's because there are so many people that are going to give you advice based off of what has worked for them. But you have to start to really figure out how to listen to your internal voice, how to know what it is that you really want and desire, how to know when to throw in the towel on something, because it's like, I know right now, this is the spirit world telling me that this ain't it. You have to really figure out how to understand your process. I mentioned earlier, play was important. It was so important for me in and out through that time, just connect to a version of myself that was enjoying myself all the time. And even though that's something you may not think about in terms of like a process of how to transition into your best life, I had to put myself in a state where I was constantly doing things that I loved so that I could then become a person who was on a wavelength to want to do something that I love professionally. So that was a big part of my process that I have never read about in a book. So, just really understanding yourself and understanding your own process and what it is that you need to be able to like reach new heights, I think is really important, because it's really a lonely journey that's all about learning to understand what you are being tasked to do. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do it, because they don't want to go through that. Yes. It is very hard to follow your own journey and your own path and deal with all the uncertainty that comes with it. So I think really understanding your own process and the things that you're going to need to be successful. I had to do a ton of therapy to undo all of, not to say that my corporate training was bad, because I've used so much of it in this space.
Right.
But there are things like, I think when you're in a corporate space, time is so important. Everything has to be done fast. Every task is urgent. Everything is, I have to be growing now. And when you start doing things on your own, you're on a different timeline. And sometimes you're trying to push things the way that we do in those spaces, but your timeline may look very different. And so there's just a lot of things I think that you have to kind of, you have to erase the learnings that aren't going to benefit you in this space that may have been beneficial before, that you may be holding on to, that may be your biggest barriers. So I think there's just a lot that you have to do to kind of prepare yourself to buffer and be ready to emotionally and spiritually exist in this space in a way that you may never have done before, because you're following the pack.
That's so good. How do you know that you're well now?
I laugh because it's like, that's a good question. This week, I'm not well. Last week, I was not well. I think that's a good thing too, to know when you're not well and be okay with that. And so that's the thing. Like you said, you call this the next best thing because it is a journey, it's a progress, right? There are moments where in this space, I'm not well. And right now I am successful and I'm doing great. I've got great clients. You know, my voiceover business is really taking off. You know what? The biggest thing I'm struggling with right now is being an extrovert and I don't get to talk to people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Cause you're in your closet doing you don't have coworkers.
No.
There's no water cooler.
No, there's not a water cooler. It's a script and a microphone and my imagination. And as much as I always thought that I was such a loner that I would be okay with it, it is really in the winter of New York right now showing up to me in a way that it's like, wow, I need people. I really need people. And so I am learning to be okay with listening to the moments when I'm not well and trying to figure out what to do with it. So now I create water cooler time. I literally factor out time in my job where I will ask a friend to come over and hang out for a couple of hours, or let's go for a walk. Because if we think about how much time we used to dedicate in a corporate setting to talking to colleagues, that's a big portion of your day.
It's most of your day. Yeah.
So it's like, why am I not baking that in? So I am on the constant ebb and flow that I think we all are on this human journey of sometimes being great and sometimes not. So I think it's more important is to recognize when things aren't going well and figuring out what you need. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it may not look like what you thought it was going to look, but it's really about figuring out how to fill up your own cup.
Yeah. God, this is so good. You put in that the thing too that like for me that's always so helpful is when I like listen to something or listen to someone and they put words to my feelings where I didn't have language. And I so appreciate you too of, you know, us just being introduced by Joy and then you just opening up your friend circle and introducing me to other women who have been amazing and have poured into me just like you have. And even though we don't have like a relationship, it just feels so organic and natural and like that black girl thing that we can't, Absolutely. It's just a thing, right?
Absolutely.
You just got to know it to know it, right?
You got to know it to know it.
So thank you so much, Nia. I just so appreciate you. And I know that you're going to help so many people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.